I fixed a hag encounter from Tomb of Annihilation, and here's how I did it. Spoilers for the Tomb of Annihilation adventure module by Wizards of the Coast. Hey there! So, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about how I fixed a hag encounter from the Tomb of Annihilation. I have been DMing for a little while now, and I've run through quite a few modules by Wizards of the Coast. And oh boy, do they have some big holes in them sometimes. I found in general these modules are quite well paced and decently structured. Structuring a campaign for a tabletop RPG is a very difficult thing to do. However, I find that WotC misses a lot of the fine details sometimes. It's not surprising, really. I mean, they have to plan out combat encounters for any different number of adventuring parties, and then make it all seem like a fair fight all the time. To summarize what we'll be discussing, at the end of the module, the players are treated to a multi-floor dungeon filled with traps called the Tomb of the Nine Gods. It makes up a whole chapter of the book, and it's a homage to the trap-infested Tomb of Horrors. Largely, it does a great job at that. However, it falls down in some places, especially the combat scenarios. At the bottom of the dungeon is a group of night hags, and if you bought some of the supplementary material for this module, you'll know that each of these hags have names and also a little bit of backstory to them. The module, it does actually name them and gives a little bit of detail about them, but doesn't really go into a lot of depth. The final encounter with them, however, is a little bit uninspired. Let's take a little look at the battle map real quick, which we'll be using. As you can see, the battle map is laid out with two raised bits of terrain on either side of the room with stairs at the end, which lead up to it. There are doors which lead out from the room to more trap rooms, and at the end of the room is a big door which the players need to unlock. There are two cages in the room, a bubbling cauldron filled with broth the players really shouldn't drink. The hags are actually already in the room at this point. When you enter, they're currently chilling out in the ethereal plane. That's one of the things that the night hags can do. And by the time the players arrive, they'll encounter these three creepy dolls imbued with the souls of the hags' victims. They'll warn the players that they're about to enter a hag's lair. By this point, the players are probably about level 9 to 10. And as anyone who's moderately experienced with Dungeons & Dragons will know, 3 night hags are going to be easy pickings for levels 9 to 10, especially on a flat, featureless battleground like this. The hags will attack when the players retrieve all the keys to the big door at the very end. That's the player's objective. It's also the hag's objective to stop them opening it. The perfect time to strike is when all of the players have gone through all the trap rooms adjoining this main room, and they've been weakened by them. You could argue that the night hags have a good set of spells, but really that's their only redeeming feature at this level of play. Remember, level 9 to 10 player characters are incredibly difficult to kill. They're durable, they'll likely have multiple movement options to get away from danger, they'll have upwards of level 4 spells, and likely have a bunch of magic items as well. To make things even worse for the hags, if one of these hags die, they'll lose the ability to cast all the cool spells that they get thanks to the Coven magic feature. They're also kind of backed into a corner a little bit. The big bad evil guy will probably hunt them down if they fail to defend the dungeon, so the hags kind of need to fight to the death here. So is this fight stacked entirely against the hags? Well, not really. If you trigger this encounter after the players have gone through half a dozen traps, then they might well be worn down and wounded by the time that they get to this hag encounter. These hags won't necessarily need backup to be dangerous. But the first thing I did when I was playing this module was just cast See Invisibility in the room, and then I just immediately spotted the ambush and ruined my TM's day. So this encounter can definitely trigger before the players go through all of the traps that they're supposed to. The hags do know the players are coming because it's referenced in the module that they'll visit the players while they're resting in the dungeon. The fun part about these hags is that they'll make clones of the player characters and actually experiment on them to find their weaknesses. The cages in the dungeon will actually contain the corpses of these clones, with a single one being left alive. So my question to Wizards of the Coast really is, why don't the hags actually use any of this information? There's very little guidance about this encounter past what I've just discussed, so it's entirely up to the Dungeon Master to fill in the gaps. Given that the Night Hags know a lot about our players at this point, they're definitely going to be calling in some backup. It's probably best to tailor this encounter to your party to make it feel like they've actually done their research. If the hags know their tricks, then they'll develop countermeasures. So let's talk about a few ideas to make this fight a little bit more difficult. The first thing I would do is give the hags some actual minion support. Minion support goes a hell of a long way, especially for monsters which are mostly casters. We have to keep in mind that the battlefield here is actually quite cramped though. There's a few avenues to approach the hags, but not really many. And there's not a lot of space on this battlefield too, so we don't really want to fill out too many of these squares with creatures, otherwise it will become unmanageable very quickly. We want to have a low number of support minions that can pack a punch. Having a sturdy front line can really help turn the tide for spellcasters like hags. I'd actually recommend some scarecrows for this purpose. I'll be real, they won't win the fight, they're not going to last very long, but they'll waste the adventurer's time for the hags to do their work. They're a long way from a sturdy line of spears, but at the very worst, they'll have lasted a turn, and they'll have contributed their value. That's a whole turn of unharassed spellcasting for the hags. Remember, these minions shouldn't be winning the fight on their own. They're here to support the hags and let them do their job. If you want a bit of a beefier frontline, considering adding a Yeth Hound. If you've not used one of these guys before, they're a D&D classic. They're durable monsters with a large fear-giving area of effect. This will stop players moving towards them. To use the wargaming term for this type of unit, they're basically just a tar pit. Because space is a premium, I'd actually consider backing up our Yeth Hound with a few swarms of bugs. Swarm enemies actually attack players while standing on the player's square, so we're making economical use of the space. We can also convincingly hide these bugs just about anywhere on the map where there's furniture and have them deploy from a number of different angles if we want to. Now, does the party have a rogue which is difficult to pin down? Consider actually sending a Kored after them. Koreds use their hair to grapple an opponent so they can't get away. Grappling isn't used very often in D&D, and neither is the Kored, which is a bit of a shame. They're very durable, and they also come with a burrow speed, so they can be used as an ambusher. Lastly, we kind of need to lock these players' escape route down, which luckily for us is a single staircase. Try hiding a boggart near the door. The boggart's stat block doesn't do a lot of damage, but it does have a fear effect to push your players back into the room. I wouldn't put anything too nasty at the players' back, in all honesty. A good speed bump is enough to get them worried, and if you put anything too much, it might be considered a little bit unfair, maybe. I originally used a Shadow Demon in my game for this role, but I feel a Boggart is a bit more on brand for a bunch of hags. That cauldron in the middle of the battlefield is a little wasted too. Hags are tricky opponents, after all. I feel this is a prime location for a Mimic or something. One which can spill out the nasty contents of the cauldron on the first turn of combat and create an environmental hazard. Speaking of a nasty first turn surprise, why not add this adorable little Foxen stat block to the fray? This cute little creature can be in the hag's lair when the players find it. Naturally, it exudes an aura of calm. Now, inevitably, this will divide the players into two camps. One half will think it's an cute, adorable fey creature. The other will think it's a trap because of that calming aura. What they don't know, however, is they're absolutely right, the creature is a trap. The Tomb of the Nine Gods is full of traps, which force you to think twice or die. So one more trap like this won't go too amiss. When the hags spring their assault, our cute, adorable creature reveals its true nature. It's actually a bomb. I just removed the Foxen, honestly, and placed a fireball at whatever's standing there at the time. Don't like that, maybe just having a rabbit instead? I don't know, I think it's a really funny idea, personally. The one thing I wouldn't do is add more spellcasters. The spells that the hags have are already enough to be a bit of a threat, and running too many spellcasters as a DM can be a real pain. So I'd leave the back line to them. And there you have it, really. A far more deadly and far more difficult hag ambush. For my game, I actually used a Mimic, 2 Scarecrows, a Kored, a Shadow Demon, and about 3 swarms of bugs to make a real knife-edge combat. There's also a few other things I'm sure you could substitute, but those were my ideas. I'd love to know if anyone else had thoughts about this encounter, honestly, because the whole thing sort of feels like a bit of an afterthought on part of the designer. Then again, this is also the same module which had to cut the entire city of Mesro because there was just only so much space, and it was released as an additional add-on. I get the feeling the designer was doing their best with an overly attentive publisher, honestly. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If this helped, then please give this video a like. It helps a bunch. I'll be making more of these videos in the future, so make sure to stay tuned and subscribe. If you want me to look at or cover a specific topic in a video, I'd love to know what it is, so consider leaving a comment. Also, I stream on Twitch, so link below if you want to talk to me live, and there's a link in the description for my socials as well if you want to talk to me there. That's all from me. See you next time. Cheerio.